if you go over it because I didn't. No, because I did. What am I saying? I'm getting 68 out of 70, so... blah, blah, blah. Hello and welcome to today's video. So my previous video, which was a geography A-level one, I thought I'd go into detail about how to do the NEA, which is the non-exam assessment. It's essentially a huge coursework thing, and I thought I'd talk you through how I did it. Quick disclaimer, to be honest, our teacher was really strict on the little amount of guidance she gave, so I just thought I'd put in my opinion on just how to do well. So the independent investigation is coursework needed for A-level geography, and it is made up of 20% of your whole grade. It is a 4,000 word essay, basically completing your own investigation into a topic of your choice based on the parts in the syllabus that you've done. Don't worry about the word count because it doesn't really matter if you go over it because I didn't. No, because I did. My coursework was one that had to be sent off to be like invigilated, but I received my marks before that, so they assume it should stay roughly the same. So I ended up getting 68 out of 70, so let's just call that 4 marks for the title of this video. Then it's not really clickbait, but kind of is, but hopefully you'll let it slide. My independent investigation title was, in what ways and to what extent have players been affected by the regeneration of sulfur keys? Now, while there's a 4,000 word guidance limit, I did 11,500 words, so as you can kind of see, they're not really strict about the guidelines, it's just an average idea. So you should be able to do a decent one in 4,000 words, but I don't think that's really reasonable with the amount you have to do in it. So when I look at my contents page, I'm going to read you out my separate things, and then I'm going to put a timestamp below in the description box so you can click to like each part. Firstly, I did my introduction, which was where I kind of said what I wanted to investigate and why. I then came up with 3 inquiry questions, which is what I wanted my investigation to answer, and then I went over that in a bit of detail. I then did a whole kind of history of the area and how the whole area was regenerated really in the history, and the kind of why it needed to be regenerated, how the regeneration was done, and just general things like that. So the background of why I felt like my statement or my question was something that needed to be investigated. Here I ended up using the census and basically recorded a lot of statistics, because in an investigation quite a lot of what you find is subjective, whereas if you've got like stats and evidence and facts and figures, it's a good way to back up your claims. So use a lot of facts and figures that can be found either from the internet or what eventually will be primary data when you go and carry out some research yourself based on what your question is. So that took up for me about 14 pages, so that was kind of the main chunk of kind of the background and what I was going to research into. Then in the July we all went on a class trip to sulfur keys, because a lot of our classes' questions were based around sulfur keys, so we all went up there and we got the day to kind of do our own research. So beforehand we had to create our own questionnaires, primary data that we were going to collect there, so I'm just going to briefly say what I did for my primary data. Questionnaires, a bipolar environmental quality survey, site readings, decibel readings, registration code and region of origin survey, which wasn't really very good. It was assuming quite a lot. I mean, it was assuming that where your car was from was where you came from, which is, as most people can probably know, not a very good way, but it gave us something to evaluate at the end. Like, even if something didn't work, still include it, because you can use that to like analyse it at the end and kind of get more marks for basically critiquing your own work. As well as primary data, we also needed secondary data, so I ended up doing Twitter tagging, which is essentially where you kind of search on Twitter something related to your question, and then you can kind of get people's opinions. So like, people tend to rant on Twitter, so if someone was like, oh, I hated sulfur keys, then I could use that as evidence of people hating sulfur keys, and maybe use that to kind of see, well, maybe the regeneration didn't benefit them, which would have answered one of my 3 key questions. For my primary and secondary data, I did what was called a methodology table, which is where you basically explain what you did, why you did it, how it answers your 3 questions, and critique it if you found that some things didn't work or there were some like ethical implications. Then those were things to mention throughout each part you did. Then you ended up writing out what you found, and you also kept these in their like original copy, so you could kind of put it in the back as well of the like actual document when you print it out. Then you had to do a statistical test, which actually wasn't as bad as it sounds, because to be perfectly honest, you get a test and then you just kind of substitute in what n was, square it, and then you get your answer. It's not too hard, but you definitely do need to include one. So then I went on to use maps and pictures to explain my findings. I would do so the decibel readings in 4 different locations around Salford Quays. I had my map and I labelled where the points were so that you could kind of know, and I'd basically write out my data, but I wouldn't just write the figures. I kind of explain like why I thought it was like that, why it may have changed, what it might have used to have been like, to kind of build a picture around how this evidence is going to link up to my questions. Then for the analysis, I ended up answering my 3 questions. So first I started by basically defining what my question meant, what it was about, how I'd kind of measure that, and basically I answered each of my questions like that. So each of these questions did vary in length. Some of them were a page, some of them were 2.5 pages, others not even, the other one not even a page. So it just depends on how much research you've got that you can put into that one question. You're not going to have loads of data for every question maybe, and you don't need to write loads for every bit. You just need to show every single step all the way through. Then you do a whole subtitle of your actual inquiry question, like not the 3 sub ones, the 3 sub ones. You combine your answers into the main one. So then you answer basically your main question and you pick bits from the other 3 into your answer, and this one should only be like 1.5 pages, so it's definitely not the bulk of it. The bulk of it is definitely like analysing the methods and all the other kind of stuff you do behind the scenes rather than your actual kind of answer, if that makes sense. Then I did a conclusion and evaluation where I kind of just critiqued a lot of my work. So I'd kind of do how I'd improve it, what I'd do differently if I did it again. Mainly it was improving my questionnaire questions and just making them either a bit more open or a bit more closed or more specific so I could categorise it better. I just summed up everything neatly into like a big paragraph. Then of course you have to have your sources. Don't leave them till the end because you will have no idea where you got half your information from. Make a document as you go. Copy and paste everything into one huge document that you're going to use, and then copy the link as well, so then you know you've got all the information. You can pick out the bits you want, put it in your actual document, and then you've got the link for it, so you can put that as a source. I kept fresh copies of my data collection sheets so I could put them in the back. I don't think I included the ones that I'd used because I think it'd been raining and they'd all like creased up and smudged and everything, so I think I just printed out clear ones and I either put them in blank or I just quickly wrote in what the results were from like the crumpled up ones, so it looked a bit better. Have a look in the textbooks, as there was a specific, I think I wrote down the Oxford A-level book, I don't know what that means. I just remember her saying like you can't take it out of the classroom whatsoever, you weren't allowed to take any of your stuff home. Like obviously if it was on your computer then you could take that, but you couldn't, like they were very, very strict on what you could have and what you couldn't have. And then I've put pages and I've written analysis and conclusion, so I assume that's where I found quite a bit of help on how to structure it. The hard thing with the NEA is the fact that your teachers are really not allowed to give you much help. We started our NEAs at the end of year 12 and I think we had them in by January of year 13. We got some time in lesson, but most of it was kind of independent work, basically. You can team up with your friends to get like group data, so if one of you gets it, you can all use it for your investigation, but you can't have the same question as anyone else in your class. So we did a proposal sheet where we kind of wrote what our questions were going to be, and then I think that ended up getting sent to the exam board and they wrote like if what you were doing was okay, but I mean I never heard anything of it. Work on it in bits by bits, get a section and do that section, get the next section and do that. Like I wouldn't do bits from different things and then kind of clump it together. I'd have like separate Word documents with different titles, so be organised. What not to do is don't save all your tabs. Like, don't have it at the top of Google so you can click on each one. Like, don't bookmark it, because my friend did that and then her computer lost all of her work and all of, like, it crashed and all her tabs went and absolutely, she lost everything. So I'd definitely say, like, back it up with iCloud or with OneDrive so you know it's safe. You can make a draft, but your teacher cannot mark anything. Honestly, you give it her and she'd read it and she'd be like, okay. Like, she could not give anything away because the rules are that strict. Like, I've just got the document up here with basically what Pearson have said the rules are. It is really independent. I think the information is out there. It is hard to find because I remember trying to search up help and I came across one video, and while that was helpful, I still needed more. So I think because I did my A-levels in 2019, there's a bit more playing net of what I can say. So if you do have any other questions, please just drop me a comment or a DM on Instagram, which is like someone did the other week about my geography, which I thought was so sweet because it was so nice, and I just thought it was really good that my videos were helping people. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. Please give it a thumbs up if you did, and comment down any questions or anything. And, you know, maybe subscribe because that'd be cool, but no pressure. But thank you for watching and see you next time.